Carolina. Well, let's get back to Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the question of Russia. He's going to be amending his testimony in writing to senators. We understand he'll be meeting with President Trump tonight at Mar-a-Lago as well. He's also promising to, as I was mentioning, go back to that testimony that he provided to senators earlier during his confirmation hearings, and this about his contacts with Russia's ambassador during the presidential campaign. President Trump may have tried to deflect that criticism today when he unleashed that Twitter storm, accusing President Obama of tapping his phones and calling attention to Obama's meetings with the same Russian ambassador. Trump also posting pictures of Democrats Nancy Pelosi meeting with Russian representatives and Senator Chuck Schumer with Russian President Vladimir Putin. For more on this, I'm joined by, here in studio with Congressman Khanna of California, who sits on the House Committee on Armed Services. Congressman, thanks for being here right now. Does President Trump have a point here? Are these contacts with the Russians, are they being overblown? Are they being created?
Well, he's trying to obfuscate the issue and distract. The issue is that Jeff Sessions lied under oath. And if anyone does that, they ought to be resigned. And so there shouldn't be a double standard for Jeff Sessions.
Well, you've heard his criticism. He said when you look at Chuck Schumer, U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer, as well as Leader Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats there in the House, he put out a couple pictures and he was saying, look, they've also had contact and evidently were unable to remember that they had these contacts. So therefore, Jeff Sessions should be absolved, and he fits in the same space.
Well, they're not testifying in front of Congress. I mean, the issue is not whether Jeff Sessions had those contacts. That's separate, and there should be an investigation. The issue is he point-blank said he never met the ambassador under oath, and so he lied. And he admits that those statements were inaccurate.
So whether it's a lie, are you going to go as far to say that he's also perjured himself?
Well, that's for the courts to decide, but he certainly lied.
That means intentionally, knowingly not speaking the truth.
Yes, I mean, that means willfully, and I don't want to get to the legal question, but at the base fact of it, he misled those senators, and he hasn't admitted that he misled them.
He's recused himself from any potential investigation that may come out of the Department of Justice. Isn't that enough?
Well, it's not, because it doesn't get to this point that we need to have transparency in government. Consider if a junior person did this when they have their background checks and they're asked, did you ever have a contact with a foreign government? And if they said, no, I didn't, and then it comes out that they did, they'd be removed the next day. Just because Jeff Sessions is high profile doesn't give him a separate standard to the truth. We have a government of the laws, and it's very important for him to be transparent.
Okay, so we have the Intel Committee from the House and the Senate. We also have Judiciary Committees. They're ongoing, they've started and have ongoing investigations, from what we understand, looking into the ties of not only Attorney General Jeff Sessions, but others in the Trump team here. Do you think that's going to be effective enough? Because we do have some questions about whether, because of Republican control, whether that can happen.
Well, this ought to be a bipartisan issue, and it ought not to even focus on Trump. It ought to focus on a foreign country's interference in our democratic process. Let's investigate everything, and it ought to be fact-based. And that's why I hope some of my Republican colleagues will join in the call for a bipartisan, fact-based investigation that will look at all the influence that Russia may have had in our election.
The president has said that improved relations with Russia would benefit the United States. Do you agree?
It's a separate issue. I actually think, Henry Kissinger has said that we ought to look at some form of rapprochement with Russia, and whether Ukraine should be in NATO, whether we should be expanding there. That's a foreign policy question, and we ought to debate it. But he's, again, distracting from the issue. This issue is, did Russia try to intervene in our democratic process? And if Russia did it, how do we know other countries aren't going to do it? Every American citizen should want to get the basic facts on this.
You hail from California, a state that is rich with immigration history here. It's something you've talked about, shifting gears, as you can tell here, based on another development that happened today. This is the announcement that we're getting from two sources that's saying, come Monday, the president will sign a new executive order on immigration, an immigration travel ban. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I haven't seen the specifics, but so far the executive orders he has signed have been unconstitutional. I mean, they've done things such as deprive people of access to lawyers, racially profiling individuals. So I want to see the specifics of this, but he needs to uphold the Constitution.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time for stopping by today.
Thank you.
Representative Khanna from California. All right. Joining me now is Catherine Rampell, opinion columnist at the Washington Post.